You're tuned into Recovery TV, the voice of hope, with your host, John J. Tassoni Jr. Discussions and information on addiction and mental health issues. Here's your host, John J. Tassoni Jr., with today's guest.
Welcome to another edition of Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni. My guest today was Mr. Tommy Joyce. Tommy is the chairman of the Problem Gambling in Rhode Island, but first I want to talk to you about Narcan. Please get it. It's free. Anywhere. Put it in your purse. Put it in your car. Take it out at night. This saves lives. We're down 7% on overdose deaths. We need to do better. So thank you. Mr. Joyce, how are you, my friend?
How are you, Senator?
Good. And thank you for joining us today. And let's talk a little bit about your role as the chairman of the Problem Gambling.
Sure. So I think for the past little over 2 years, I've been the president of the Rhode Island Council of Problem Gambling. Had a good mentor in the beginning who kind of going to transition me there. But and before that, I was working as a clinician doing some problem gambling with East Bay Community Action Program, and then got involved with the council. And it's been doing some great work. So very excited about some new initiatives we have coming up for this year.
Good. Well, let it rip.
Sure. So since I've been with the council, we've formed a really close relationship with the Rhode Island Lottery, with Director Furcolo. And then through legislation, which a lot of people worked, you included, with the online gaming apps that were coming out,
right,
specifically the sport betting, we formed a relationship with Bally's. It's been excellent. So it gives us a little bit more funds to bring us up to date on some things. Most importantly is our website. And so we just created a whole new website that's going to have a lot of information on it, bring it into the current age, but also would allow us to reach a different demographic, not just people with problem gambling, but more of the families, the loved ones, and actually looking at the younger demographic too, the younger age.
Right, right. Now with that website, I saw a peekaboo of it a couple of weeks ago. John Cipolla, who's putting that whole thing together, it's quite the website. I will be honest with you. A lot of drop-down boxes, a lot of information on it, both for families and people who have issues with gambling, for them to get resources, and if in fact they get in trouble, who to basically call, what kind of programs they can get in. You know, it's from the southern part of the state all the way to the northern part of the state. You know?
And I think so. So I think there's a lot of information on the site, so we are working on it and tweak it a little bit to be a little bit more easier to maneuver through.
User-friendly.
Yeah. But, gambling is different than some other addictive behaviors. You don't know until the financial hardship comes.
Until you get the bill in the mail.
Exactly. So you don't know the symptoms of coming through. And unfortunately, there's not too many resources out there. So I know the Problem Gambling Services has done an excellent job of recruiting clinicians to get the gambling endorsement, and to have agencies come on board to do the screenings. I know it wasn't too long ago with the opioid treatment programs, they did some screenings to find a direct link. And I think now with the council, there was one, we were trying to get to the high school age, college age. And so I think with this website and some of our new programming, we can actually get there. So I know we just formed a relationship with the Rhode Island Interscholastic League. And so we will have some presence at the high school championships that are coming up, and actually get some programming that's out there, because one of the big things that we're looking at and seeing a trend is video games, and how video games is, for lack of better terms, almost a grooming ground for
the next step.
For the next step that's there. And I know I have a teenage son, and it is, we're trying to target those high school athletes that have access to that, and going through, and don't see an issue now, and it might not be, but at least we can educate the parents to know what some of those symptoms are.
Yeah, and it's just a couple of weeks ago I was talking to Desiree about the umpire in baseball, along with a few other of his colleagues that, promoting gambling. Like, what are you doing? I mean, you need to clear your head there. I mean, you're in the game.
Yeah, but I think people involved in sports, and professionally or even to a different degree, are competitive by nature.
Right.
And so, gambling does feed that of going through. But again, who knows when those issues are coming unless something happens. So personally, I think what problem gambling is that we're still reactive to, and so I think with the council now, we're kind of take a more of a proactive approach. Not really I don't want to say preventative, but proactive. Getting the education out there, letting people know there's services, and especially the family members, to let them know there's resources available, so when that does happen, they have the support that they need.
Yeah. In your estimation, Tom, I know you've been there for a couple of years, and have you seen the problem gambling grow?
Yes. So I know the call line is always busy. We mentioned John Cipolla, who's, I don't know that there's anyone more dedicated with him and Nancy Murray on addressing problem gambling in Rhode Island. But there's more access. And I think when there's more access,
there's more problems.
There's more issues. And you were mentioning Narcan at the beginning, and if you look at some of the work we've done in overdose prevention, we're still reactive. We're trying to be proactive, but I think we have a really good chance of getting these programs where they're needed, whether it's in the junior highs or the high schools, to at least plant a seed. And how do we get the parents' attention? Well, they're going to go to the games, and that's why I think the Rhode Island Interscholastic League is going to be very key for us to get to those people, to at least get them the education and get them the resources they need, because they only know what they know.
Right. They know what they know because the legislature decided to do the app at 18, not 21, at 18. So you can go there, and actually, if you're a senior in high school, you get the app, and we're hearing stories all the time about little Johnny going up and getting the app, and now he's running his own business in the high school.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy.
Well, I know when I was in high school, it was the football cards were big.
Right.
The app has replaced that.
Right.
Which is dangerous. And then you can go into the casino at 18. And so, I have an 18-year-old son, and every once in a while he gets out of work, works in a restaurant. He might go for an hour and meet his friends. But I have conversations with him. So I think anytime you're dealing with youth is conversations, and open communication is key.
Yeah.
Of, if he's going to make a decision, make an educated decision. And I think the same goes with parents. When it comes to video games and how much time people are spending, or, the parents will see on a video game how much is on their credit card, whether they're buying, how to level up and do those things.
Right.
I went through that at one time when my son was younger. Didn't realize everything cost money. But there are also designed some games where just when you think you're going to win, you don't. But then your instinct is to go back in. And that's what we're a little bit scared of, because a lot of times the casino games run the same way.
Yeah, so it's like going fishing, a little bit. A little bit.
But it's that adrenaline rush that hits you. And it's so, there's been some studies where the reaction to the body just before the roulette wheel stops or the slot machine stops is similar to your brain as someone just doing a little bit of cocaine right then and there. So it's that adrenaline rush that you get, and that you hold your breath for a minute, that's attractive to a lot of people.
We're going to take a quick break. You're watching Recovery TV, and I'm your host, Sean Tassoni. We're here with Tommy Joyce, who's the chairman of the board for Rhode Island Council on Problem Gambling. We'll be right back after these messages.
And now, back to Recovery TV with your host, John J. Tassoni Jr. Recovery TV is made possible by our supporting sponsors and our title sponsor, AdCare. Now, here's John and today's guest.
Welcome back to Recovery TV, and I'm your host, Sean Tassoni. Tommy Joyce is in the house, and Tommy's the board chair of the Rhode Island Council on Problem Gambling. Tommy, thank you for what you do. Thank you for joining me today. I greatly appreciate it. I want to talk a little bit about the ad that you guys are running behind the screen. Let's talk a little bit about that.
So Behind the Screens is a initiative. Again, it was John Cipolla did a lot of work behind it, but it gives parents a snapshot of what could happen with overuse of video games. So there's a statistic of 190 million people play video games for more than an hour a day in the United States. And then some of those games also have those in-app purchases, and you want to level up. And I think approximately $250 billion has been spent on in-app purchases. Billion. So Behind the Screens just gives a little bit of snapshot of how the games work, what could be the potential dangers of too much exposure to that. And then it kind of gives a little bit of a link between how those games run, similarly to some of the casino games, of what the link could be there. And it's just a preventative action. It's not saying that video games are bad, but it's just saying what could lead to it. And then, so the parents have an idea, of if they're going to allow their children to play that amount of video games, at least to make an educated decision on that, what could be some of the dangers.
Right.
And so Behind the Screens is very interactive. It's a great product. And we're excited to kind of roll it out and let the parents of Rhode Island see it.
We're taping this show the day after the Super Bowl, and I heard on my way in that $1.3 billion was bet on that game, the Super Bowl between Kansas City and the Eagles. That's staggering money.
Well, again, we talked a little bit before about access. So years ago, gambling was, you had to call somebody. There was a little bit of a deterrent, a little bit of a process. Now it's right off your phone, and you can bet on any aspect of any game, whether...
No process now. Just get on the phone.
Nope. And I think that's based on that access. I call it people are on the chase. So, if you lose one, I'm going to have a backup bet kind of going through there. Myself working in the restaurant industry, but did manage a steakhouse and a casino, you do see the devastation of going through there, and you see the chase that's on there, but you also see the back end of the dread and misery and the guilt that comes along with it. So I think being proactive and preventative, if we can get to that younger age group, we can get there.
I'm very pleased to hear that the colleges are now coming up to the table. Interscholastic League is coming up to the table, because ultimately this issue could hurt both college sports, which it has. Not so much the Interscholastic League as of yet, but still, when you have an 18-year-old able to go up to the casino and get an app and put it on their phone, that's very dangerous. Very dangerous.
And instant access. They could be wherever they are. They could go and go and go. And then it doesn't stop till it's out of money.
Right.
So, and from my experience, money makes people do things outside their character, and desperate people do desperate things. And that's why you really don't hear about problem gambling until
it's too late.
Until it's on the news. There's an embezzlement, there's something that's there, and something goes on, which is why we're also working with, trying to work with the local courts. So we have another initiative coming up as our Second Chance initiative, which is run by our Vice President at the Rhode Island Council of Problem Gambling, Ernie Adams, from the Rhode Island State Police, and to try to educate the judges and people and law enforcement on what it looks like and what caused the devastation at that time of the arrest, and offer those persons the services and the resources to get better. Almost similar to like what they have in what they call a drug court here.
Right.
I mean, that would be a great goal in the future, but if we can get the education there and let people know that sick people do get better, and that they do have to pay the consequences, but we should also give them the resources and their families also at that time.
Yeah, as we know, the devastation doesn't stop with the individual. It's a whole family devastation. If in fact they have the access to get the funding to the families, and they do desperate things to do that. To try to pay it off. I mean, you look at the Los Angeles Dodgers, and that gentleman who's the pitcher / first baseman or the designated hitter, where his interpreter stole $17 million, and he didn't even know he stole $17 million.
And that's a familiar story. Not maybe at that
level.
Grand scale.
Right.
But it does happen, and mortgage payments get missed, and other things happen. And I'm a person in long-term recovery, and sometimes it's the trust, and that takes a long time to gain back.
Right.
You could look at the actions, but you look at the feelings and the shame and guilt that these individuals go through. could lead to more negative behaviors. So I think it's important to have those points of contact and have the resources available in real time. So when that person decides that things need to change, there's a place for them to go.
And it's so much easier today than it was 20 years ago with gambling.
Yeah.
So much easier. I mean, you had indicated before, it was a little process before, but now you got the app on the phone.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to get in trouble.
It is, and I said when you increase access, you should increase prevention and education, and I think just like with a lot of other issues, is how do you communicate effectively to the community, and what communities do you want to target? And it's trial and error sometimes. You're going to try different approaches and different messaging to get out there. But I truly believe with the Interscholastic League and trying to work with some of the local prevention coalitions that work in the schools is a great place to start.
But Tommy, I got to give Bally's a lot of credit for stepping up and partnering with all of you to get the message out. Because before it was very little messaging,
It was, and that's why it was, when a little while back when we first started talking with the Rhode Island Lottery about some funding and working together, I spent a lot of time with Director Furcolo, and it was seamless. It was a great relationship, and that made it easier for us to work with Bally's, and it's been phenomenal. And we're forever grateful for Director Furcolo and the lottery, and also with Bally's, because it's allowing us to have these creative initiatives with a little bit more funding to get the messaging out there, and updating our website and doing these other events that provides education.
Yeah, it's good for everybody.
It is.
It's good for everybody.
It's like one of those. Sometimes people will say, how can you work with them? And it's kind of a little bit based on stigma on both ends. I always came from the place of, you should reach your hand across and collaborate with everyone if we want to really make an impact. And what I found is those times when I was told you can't have a relationship with them ended up being the best relationships I still have to this day.
Right. We're going to take another quick break. You're watching Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni, here with Tommy Joyce from Rhode Island Council on Problem Gambling. We'll be right back after these messages.
And now, back to Recovery TV with your host, John J. Tassoni Jr. Recovery TV is made possible by our supporting sponsors and our title sponsor, AdCare. Now, here's John and today's guest.
Welcome back to Recovery TV, and I'm your host, Sean Tassoni. Mr. Tommy Joyce is in the house today. He's the chairman of the board for Rhode Island Council on Problem Gambling, and we've been talking about gambling. Well, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for what you do. That everybody thinks that the board gets paid. We don't get paid. It's a free board. We oversee everything. We get the brightest minds in the state.
I will have to second that. So we have an outstanding board, all volunteers from different stakeholders in the community, and it's people who get together to try to make a positive impact on the community and address this issue. So the council is stronger than ever. We have a good executive board, and the board meets. We've had people who've been on the board for many, many, many years who have seen the changes and have the experience and the education to meet our goals and stick to our mission.
Yeah, it's also a good board to meet the demands that have been put on the state of Rhode Island and the people that are in that gamble and to get themselves in trouble.
Yeah, and so that's why we're trying to, again, with some of the funding that we're getting now additionally, next to Bally's and the Rhode Island Lottery, to kind of reach those demographics. And that's why with our website, we kind of simplified our hotline, which is 1-800-GAMBLER. It'll take you right to 211, the United Way, and it will get you the resources that you need. If you need help right away, it's available. If you're just a family member and need information, it's there also. So, but I think it's trying to get the word out there is more important than ever, because
you're doing it.
We're just hitting the tip of the iceberg right now.
I got to cut you short because I'm being told I got to go.
That's okay.
Tommy Joyce, thank you very much for joining us today. Next week, Mr. Paul Rocchio, who was in trouble with gambling, but turned his life around. See you next week. If you see something, say something.